Sheriff Mark Lamb, man. Welcome to the Man of War podcast. It is an honor to have you on.
Thank you for having me, man. Look, I can't think of a better name for a podcast. Man of War, man. That's right up my alley.
Love it, love it. So I appreciate you being here. I mean, I know that you were here for a conference and you took the time to come to the studio here. So that's very important for me.
Brought you a challenge coin, too.
Oh.
That's my retired challenge coin.
Oh, man, I love it. I love
patch.
it. Look at that. Look at that.
Yeah, there you go, and a patch, too.
Oh, I got something for you. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Amazing. Love it. Thank you so much. All right. So for those who don't know you, which probably very few people, especially on the conservative side, people who are patriotic and American, could you kind of give a little bit of a glimpse on your life and who you are now?
Yeah, I'll try to scrape over it as quick as possible, but born and raised in Hawaii. My family are pioneers of not only of Arizona, but I'm a descendant of 8 of the occupants of the Mayflower. So going way back, we've been in America a long time. But I was actually born and raised on the Big Island in Hilo, Hawaii. And my dad was a businessman. And then we moved to the Philippines when I was 11. Then we moved to Arizona. I went to high school in Arizona, but then we moved to Panama, Central America. So spent a lot of time in Panama. Then I lived in Argentina for 2 years. And
¿Hablas español?
Sí, hablo el castellano, che, vive.
Bring it.
Hablo el castellano. Yeah, so you want to do it in Spanish? ¿Quieres hacerlo en español?
We have a good audience in
I know it throws people off
Latin
when all of a sudden the gringos start speaking Spanish, but
crazy.
Between Panama, I really learned it in Argentina is where I learned it. And then in Panama, I'd spent so much time in Panama before, it made learning it in Argentina easy. And then when I went back to Panama, obviously, I mean, it made it super easy, but yeah, it's mixed with Mexican, with Panamanian, and with Argentine.
So it's like a little bit of a mix.
Yeah.
Tell me, are your parents Hawaiian?
No, my parents are just regular Americans.
So they were living in Hawaii.
So my dad was a graduate of Thunderbird, which is an international business school out in Arizona. Now that I think ASU has kind of absorbed that international business school, but Thunderbird is one of like a premier international business school. So my dad was a graduate there. He just loved living abroad, and he had lived in Brazil for a few years. And so he moved to, I think, Trinidad first before I was born. And then they ended up in Hawaii. And then myself and 2 of my siblings we were all born in Hawaii. And we did scrap metal for the most part, but he would do contracts with the government. And that's what we did.
I'm thinking Hawaii, like, wow, what a great spot.
That was beautiful.
Beautiful, right?
Yeah, we couldn't have asked for a better childhood. But there's a lot that you learn in Hawaii. For one, it's a very warrior culture, so it's not uncommon to get in fist fights when you're a kid, especially when you're a little haole boy.
Sure.
When you're a little white kid in Hawaii, you learn how to be tough quick. And I was just a scrawny kid.
Was the beach like a big thing for you guys, or?
So the Big Island is very rainy. They don't have as many beaches on the Hilo side. They have beautiful water,
Right.
But the real beaches are on the Kona side. Okay. And so when we were kids, we would drive over to a beach called Hapuna, which is on the Kona side. Okay. And we'd go.
I mean, when you think of Hawaii, you're thinking beautiful beaches and waves and water and like.
Yeah. And you got that, but it's a little bit more rocky. And then they got the black sand beach a little further south of Hilo. But beautiful water. It's clear.
Now, you were raised there about what age?
Till I was 11. And then my dad made a business change, moved to the Philippines. We lived in Manila. And that was another great experience. Like, here I am. We weren't rich, so we would drive around on the jeepneys just like everybody else.
But you started to get that sense of culture, right, at that time.
Oh, yeah.
It's like you go from Hawaii to the Philippines, and it's like, I don't know. For me, I grew up in Spain most of my younger, till about 13 years old. So I understand that, like the different culture, which is beautiful.
Oh, I love it. I love the Hawaiian culture. The Polynesian culture is probably where my heart is most. Yeah. But then it wasn't too far off going to the Philippines. There's a lot of Filipinos in Hawaii as well.
Sure.
And so when we went there, it wasn't like a huge culture shock, but it was still a little bit of a culture shock.
Yeah.
But it gave us an appreciation. My first book I wrote is called American Sheriff, Traditional Values in a Modern World. And the very first chapter is Welcome to America. And I tell stories about how I lived in these other places. And I think a lot of Americans really don't value just how special America is. They want to focus on our faults as opposed to really, because they've never been anywhere else.
Yeah.
They've never lived anywhere else to know just how amazing America is.
Yeah.
And living in places like the Philippines gives you that feeling of, hey, I'm grateful to be an American.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure does. I think that, especially if you have an opportunity for those who don't travel, I mean, experiencing different cultures is great. And then you can really appreciate what we have here in our homeland,
Big time. And that's what I was very grateful to my parents, because we were raised learning that. We were raised learning that the world is a big place too. If you're a business person, it's
Sure.
there's a lot you can do in this world. You can make a lot of money. You can travel all over. And
Sure.
My parents removed those restrictions that so many people they don't realize they were raised with.
Yeah.
A lot of people in America never even leave the town they were born in, let alone travel outside of the United States.
Argentina.
I loved it. I was a missionary in Argentina. Awesome. Beautiful country, beautiful people, best beef. I'm a proud American. I'll get down there and they're like, our beef's the best.
Yeah.
And
They do have pretty good beef, but I don't know.
It was, man, some of the best beef I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
The way they slow cook it over the coals, and they just kind of, it's beautiful. It's good.
And Panama.
Panama is amazing. Panama is it's a melting pot of so many other countries.
Yeah.
And then Panama it was a different country in the sense that American influence was so integral in building Panama. The military bases there, the GIs forever, until the year 2000, it was a very American influenced country. But Panama, if you were a business person back in the day, was an amazing business place because they had numbered bank accounts. The U.S. screwed that up. But they had numbered bank accounts, and then you could also have a foreign company in Panama, and then do business here in the United States, and it was great.
Yeah, that was back in the day. I mean, that was a hot spot. A lot of trading going on there. Yeah.
Most people don't realize there's, I don't even know, 150 plus international banks. It's not uncommon to see people from Europe and Sweden and South America and Africa. And
Wow.
You just have a real
That's a
melting pot of people in Panama. And the culture is that I love the Latin culture. I like to come to Florida and Miami because I love that Latin culture. Don't let the hat and the boots and stuff fool you. Having been raised in those other places, I really love the Polynesian culture and I love the Latin culture.
All right. So Arizona, how did you land there?
Family was pioneers of Arizona. My mom and dad were both. My dad more than my mom. My dad went to the same high school I did, Chandler, Arizona. So my dad and his family grew up there, and we just had a long history there. So we came back to regroup. Didn't go well in the Philippines, so we come back to Arizona to regroup. And I go to junior high and high school in Chandler, Arizona, same place my dad went to school.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And so it was cool. I mean, it was a small town back then, one high school. It's not the same now. There's a ton of high schools there.
So you came back, you kind of went from Hawaii and then Arizona, and then you went to your mission trips over in these other countries.
No. So the only mission trip was Argentina. So Hawaii to the Philippines.
Philippines, right.
Didn't work out, the business that my dad was doing. I was 12, I don't remember.
Right, yeah.
So I come back to Arizona, and
So you
it was
went
nice.
to high school in Arizona,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
But when I was a sophomore in high school, my family moved to Panama. So I spent every summer, Christmas holidays, I spent that in Panama. I was there when the U.S. invaded Panama, Operation Just Cause.
Oh, boy.
I was there.
Yeah. We took that Panama Canal.
Oh, yeah. Teddy Roosevelt tells about how he took the Panama Canal way back in the 1900s. And my dad was a my dad became, I would argue, probably one of the most knowledgeable people about the inception of the Panama Canal.
Really?
America's role in the Panama Canal.
Uh-huh.
Teddy Roosevelt stood in front of Congress and said, "We took the Panama Canal."
Sure did.
Yeah, they took
sure
it,
did.
and they took the property, and they built that canal, and but like the world's a better place for it. Like anything, there's always good and bad with everything.
All right, so take me down the path of law enforcement. At one point, I imagine I saw that you started at 33 years old.
Yeah.
So I was a year younger than you when I started. So it was very interesting. I mean, by that time, I'm sure you had lived a life. You had been part of businesses, or I'm just thinking, right? Because I was in my life. I have experienced so much by the time I started law enforcement. So tell me a little bit how that went.
So I always wanted to be a business owner. My dad was a business owner. So that's what I grew up seeing and thinking, oh, I'm going to be a business owner.
Yeah.
The only job I had during that time was working at a dairy, which abruptly came to an end when I knocked out my boss, and that's a whole nother story. But then I went back to being my own business owner, and I had successes and I had failures, and you learn things along the way. And some businesses last a long time, some businesses have a lifespan. It's just the society progresses, and the product you're delivering either becomes obsolete, or somebody learns how to do it better. So I had done these businesses at the time. When I was 33, I had a pigeon control business. So I would go and clean people's roofs off. And in Arizona, pigeons can be a real problem. Yeah. And so I was cleaning their roofs off and closing out the area so the pigeons couldn't come in. Everybody in the academy thought it was funny, but I never, honestly, in my life thought about being a cop.
Wow.
I was the guy that...
You had nobody in your family that had
nobody.
been a cop?
Nobody in my wife's family, nobody in my family, nobody had been a cop. And my neighbor was a cop. And even though my business was doing okay, I didn't love it. And I just felt like I should be doing more. I just felt like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do in life. That's kind of how I was feeling. And my neighbor could see, hey, this guy needs something. So he says, hey, do you want to go on a ride along? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? He worked on an Indian reservation, and so it was right next to Mesa, Tempe, and Scottsdale. So even though it was an Indian reservation, it was not one of the remote Indian reservations. It was actually right there in the middle of the city. And so I said, yeah, I'll go on it. So it was a graveyard shift. We go out there, and there was a call for a dad who had found a 20-year-old with his 14-year-old daughter. And so he wrestles the kid out. They get into a fist fight. The kid runs out the back. We show up, and now we're looking for this kid. And they let me out of the car with the ride along. So I always say I was walking around armed with a flashlight and courage. That's what I had. Didn't know better. No vest, no nothing. Yeah. I'm walking out there, and on the reservation, you'll have a house, and then maybe nothing behind it. And back in the desert area was an old abandoned travel trailer. And so I walk up to the abandoned travel trailer, and I look in the window, and I see all this trash and clothes inside of it. And I think what I see is a quarter size of skin. And so I'm like, hey, I think this guy's in here. So they go in there, and they move the stuff. Sure enough, he's in there. They grab him. They rough him up. They tase him. They put him in cuffs. I went home that morning, woke my wife up, and said, honey, I'm going to be a cop. Yikes. And 6 months later, I was in the academy, man. That's how quickly it happened for me.
All right, but let's slow that down, because that was a part of my life where it's literally, I sat down across. I mean, I was a Wall Street broker. I was doing phenomenal, and I sat down one day across my wife, and I said, I want to be a cop. So I just want to know, for me, it was life-changing. I went from making $650,000 a year to making $38,000 a year. So it was life-changing in every way possible. Yeah. So how was it? I mean, did you, because you did the ride along, you were exposed to that. I imagine it's like, man, there's a sense of authority, a sense that you can do something great, So kind of walk me through that a little bit. Let's stay on that for a moment.
I know I usually gloss over it, but I'm glad you bring that up, because it's not as simple as I did walk home into the house and I said, honey, I'm going to be a cop. And within probably that week, I think I submitted the application. But obviously, you had that conversation with your wife. You know, we had 5 kids.
Yeah.
I was not your typical cop.
Yeah.
A few years before, I had looked at joining the military, and this was in 2000, so after 2001. And I want to do something. Like, I'm trying to figure out, I feel like I should do more.
Like you felt you need to serve.
I felt a
right?
need to serve. And
Yeah,
so the problem is military, I couldn't make it work financially.
Sure.
With 5 kids, being married, going away for so long, it didn't work. And so I had to just let that go. That was when I was about 30. Now here I am 33. And so I was kind of already predispositioned to say, okay, I can help my community here. And the beauty of it, when you're self-employed, you know this, you don't always have health insurance. I had 5 kids. I had no health insurance. So my
Just
wife,
alone, that right there.
that right there
It's
was
a
one of the biggest
huge
selling
impact.
points for
Yeah.
my wife. Not only that, I had been self-employed. And now all of a sudden, in 20 years, you're telling me I can have a retirement? So that was kind of another selling point. Although I'm not the biggest guy on retirements, but that was a selling point. And then I was probably pulling in about $6,000 a month with my company. At the time, you know, back in the early 2000s, it was a decent amount. One-man operation. But I was on roofs every day. And people used to say to my wife when I started getting into the academy, they said, aren't you worried your husband will get hurt? She said, my husband was up on roofs every day. I worried more about him falling off a roof because it probably wasn't going to kill him, but it would have jacked him up to where he couldn't support the family anymore. So for her, this was a lot safer than what I had been doing in pigeon control. So for us, it just made sense. And then also I wanted my kids, they were at that stage where I think my oldest was probably about 9 years old, 10 years old, maybe 10 years old.
Yeah.
And so he could see like, hey, my dad is a cop. And so it gave my kids, they saw me serving the community.
Sure.
They saw me progressing in my career. You know, dad comes home and we all love guns. So we all got it. It was a fast track for getting into guns for them.
Yeah.
So it really, on all those levels, was the right thing for my family. And for us, it was kind of an easy conversation because everything felt right. And it was a consistent paycheck. You don't get that when you're self-employed. You don't always get a consistent paycheck.
That's
It
true.
can be feast or famine, especially as a one-man operation, because either you're selling or you're doing the jobs, but it's hard to balance both. So for us, it was like, hey, this feels good. Let's do it.
So here you are. You went through the police academy, and all of a sudden you have a full-time job as a cop. And I'm wondering, what was going through your mind at that time? And now you have a badge, you have a gun, and there's a. So did you initially you worked for a tribal department?
Yeah.
Okay, for a while. That must have been a little bit different, huh?
It's very different.
Yeah.
I loved it though. Like that's a good place to cut your teeth as a cop.
Yeah.
Because they're not always the most compliant. They can be very, hey, screw you. That authority doesn't always register there. Where you go off the reservation and you tell somebody, the thought of them losing their job or all these things computes in their head usually.
Sure.
A lot of alcohol on the reservation. And it's a small, tight-knit thing. And gangs were huge on the reservation. So when I got out there, when I first became a cop, I thought, I want to be a range deputy, be the guy that patrols all the remote area. But then quickly I started gravitating to the gang stuff. And I started really taking the time before I was a gang and drug detective. I would focus on the gangs. I don't want to say I'd go after them, but I didn't run from them like a lot of other guys would. They would take a beat where the casino was so they could deal with non-natives all day long, where I wanted to be right in the heart of the community. Every extra shift I took, I didn't take shifts where, in my career, I bet you I took less than 2 or 3 jobs on a traffic detail where I sat and watched a show and watched. I probably 2, I think. If I took an extra shift, I took it in the community and I went out and did police work.
I love that. Because
I
appreciate that, man.
I was of the thought process that I came in this later, and if I'm going to do this, I want to be the master of my craft.
Sure.
And so I want to expose myself to as much of the job as possible I don't want easy money. That's not what I'm here for. I want to be a master of my craft. And so I took all the jobs, man, jobs that other people didn't want to take, and no competition because they didn't want them.
And you learned so much.
And I felt like where a guy was when we started off the same, not only because of my age, you know, getting in older, you already have a different mindset.
Yes.
But then I took those extra shifts. So I was already 2-3 years ahead of these guys where we started together.
Yeah.
Because of how I was, you know, going through my career.
So then you were there for how long? For a few years?
So after about 2 to 3 years, I became a gang and drug detective. So I spent the
in the tribe police,
yeah.
terror police.
And look, gangs are a big problem. Violent gangs.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we ended up doing a federal RICO case against one of the gangs. Drive-by shootings, stabbings, shootings, assaults, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the gangs were not like you would typically see in a city where it's about turf. You know, it's about drug sales in a community, or it's about just, you can't come into my neighborhood. This was families that wore specific clothes, colors.
Much deeper.
Much deeper. Even though they were the same tribe. And we used to always say that. You're like, you folks are the same tribe and you're over here trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
But man, they just gravitated to the gangs. I think it, you know, Colors back in the day, the show Colors.
Yeah.
Probably ignited a lot of that.
I have a friend that works in the Seminole police department here, and he tells me the same thing. And when it comes to alcohol, forget the weekends. You know, that's just non-compliance all day long. You know,
but you learn how to go hands-on. Look, in my full career, I never used my taser. We were going to go hands-on, or either you were going to beat me or I was going to beat you. You know, but I was also the guy. The one thing I worried about was, can you control you see somebody abusing a child or beating their wife. Your question is, when you get into the profession, can I control those emotions when I get out there? And that was the one thing I wasn't sure. And you don't know until you get out and do the job. But I actually, I'm a fan of stoicism books, you know, the whole Marcus Aurelius, the whole mantra. And I was able to really control it. Like I was violent when I needed to be violent. I was caring when I needed to be caring. And I never crossed any of the lines, you know, that were a guardian of the public, a preserver of the peace, a protector of the Constitution should be. And I felt like I balanced that really well throughout my career.
So you had that sense of controlled violence.
Which I think you need to be a dangerous person.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, I mean, I've done a lot of research and a lot of study. Well, unfortunately, the interactions with, you have police departments that are interacting in a way that hurts cops. Yeah. Everything is hesitation. You know, cops are afraid to go hands-on because, you know, they're afraid of the administration and what's going to happen, and people, you know, being charged with these, you know, city attorneys all over the place charging cops because they go hands-on. I mean, I have a lot of opinions in this, and we'll dive into it in a little bit. But boy, it's we were talking before the podcast started that, you know, police work has changed a lot. Oh. You know, and the fact that you know, you took the next step and you started guiding and being at a higher level and making an impact in law enforcement. That's a very big deal.
Well, and it was about 2011, and I just didn't like the direction of the country. Yeah. I thought there was a lot of politicians that were really driving a wedge between law enforcement and the community. Mm-hmm. You would see these cases, and it was about when body cameras started coming out, and people were getting phones, and so now you were starting to see. This profession is a profession of bad optics. Like, we're showing up in bad situations. And so for somebody to believe that the optics are going to be like, I'm not delivering a bouquet of flowers. That's right. Like, I'm showing up to stop a domestic violence. I'm showing up to stop an assault, to clean up the mess of a murder. Like, that's what we're showing up for. So the optics inherently are not good. Yeah. And so they started taking those and twisting it and really driving a wedge between law enforcement and the community. And I'm one of those guys, like, if you're going to complain about something, you better be willing to do something about it. You better pick up the sword. If you're going to complain, you better be willing to pick up the sword. Yes. And so instead of just complaining about it, I told my guys that I was on the gang unit with, I said, you know what? I'm going to run for sheriff. I'm tired of this. And I was tired of bad leadership. You talk about it, and I know we're going to dive into it later, but a lot of what you were referring to is born of bad leadership. It's bad supervisors, people that don't protect their guys. And so I thought, we need better leadership. We need to stop this. We need to show the community that law enforcement is not the enemy. And so I thought the best way for me to do that was to run for sheriff. When I told the guys I was going to run for sheriff, they're like, nah, you're crazy. And I said, no, man, seriously, I'm going to run for sheriff. Unbeknownst to them, I put my application in at the county, had the best job at the reservation, and had a take-home car, all that stuff. And I went to the county and took a $25,000 pay cut. That conversation was a lot harder than the conversation getting into law enforcement.
Wow.
But my wife and I knew what it was, what the goal was long term. 2011, I ran in 2015, 2016, got elected in 2016. So when you think about, you see people at the top and you think, oh, that guy's lucky. No. There was a lot of pain and a lot of sacrifice in those 5 years. And that was, some people it may take them 10, 20 years of sacrifice.
Yeah, people miss that gap.
They miss that gap. And that gap's not sexy.
No.
They only want to see you at the end. They don't want to see the work that goes into it.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And the pain that goes into it. And so that's how I ended up as a sheriff. I thought we need better leadership in law enforcement, and we need to send a different message nationally that police are the good guys.
So here you are, you took the position as sheriff. Now, obviously you just upped your responsibility level, 100-fold.
Yeah.
Here you are, the department falls squarely on your shoulders. What's your thinking like at this point? Are you trying to come into this department and change things immediately? Or see, one of the things I've had the opportunity moving up the ranks, but I felt, at least in the departments that I've been part of, like the top wasn't the greatest place to be and to make the most impact. A lot of these chiefs and sheriffs, they live their lives based on knee-jerk reactions. What the latest cop did, then you're going to change everything because one cop did something, and then you have disconnection with the guys on boots on ground. And so, kind of walk me through your mentality going in, taking over a new department like that.
I hated knee-jerk reaction, and I hated the fact that cops were left to fend for themselves. And somebody had to be a champion for the profession and a champion for the guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, we set out and we knew that a ton of changes needed to happen. The guy before me, this is not a knock on any of that. There was low morale. There was the county and the sheriff were not connected. So the guys hadn't had raises in 11 years. There was a lot of guys wanting to leave. The cars were not as up to speed. The equipment needed to be better. We had to have better relationships with the county. There was a lot of work to do.
And cops, like you said, cars, and that's a big thing for a cop.
It is.
Like getting new cars, even though it's not like people don't really think of it that way. It is. Like I remember like having new cars. It was like, gosh, having a new car, it's kind of cool instead of driving a 10, 15-year-old, beater out there.
Yeah. If you get in a beater car every day, you don't feel like, there's a reason why billionaires and millionaires drive nice cars.
Yeah. Because
you feel good getting out of it. You want your guy to feel like, hey, I didn't just show up here in some piece of junk clunker to respond to your call. Yeah. So yeah, we had to improve the equipment and everything. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing for me was I had to earn the respect of all the deputies, and I had to do it fast. And so the way I did it is I hit the road with them. Look, you have your layers of all these people. And this is one of the things that I think when you're in a big agency, the chief and the sheriff have the luxury of letting other people do their job and run the agency.
Yes.
Okay. Your job is to set the vision, to make sure that they're marching to your beat.
You're basically a CEO.
You're the CEO.
Yeah.
And the CEO should go and understand what the employees think.
Absolutely.
And so I spent a lot of time out there working with the guys, Then Live PD came out, and so then I didn't initially. They weren't riding with me, but one day we drug some dude out of a house, and they're like, "Who's that cowboy dragging that guy out of the house?" And they're like, "That's the sheriff." And so next thing you know, Live PD started riding around with me, and then we did 60 days in, and so. But here's the other thing I always knew: not only was it working with the guys, I couldn't understand why law enforcement leaders were not using social media and were not using the tools that were developing in society. We were losing the battle because they weren't using the tools that the citizens were now and the cop haters were using to create another narrative on us.
Yep.
And so I was like, no, we're going to use this to set the narrative. We're going to show people this is the work we do. It's not always pretty, but this is the work we do. And we got damn good people out there doing it. And what it did was not only did it ingratiate my troops to me right away, they understood, hey, he's proven he's going to have our back. People wanted to come from all over the country to work with us because we set that standard of, hey, we do real police work here. We chase you. We hope you don't get out of line. We're going to protect you. We're going to protect your constitutional rights. But if you get out of line, you try to hurt one of our citizens, we're going to be there to stop you. And my guys, man, they took off. It's amazing what they'll do when you let them, when they know that they back you. Far less people get hurt. The hesitation is what gets cops hurt and gets citizens hurt.
Yes.
When you allow them, it doesn't look great, but if I put my hands on you fast and hard, I'm going to neutralize that situation a lot quicker.
100%.
And you're not going to get hurt, and I'm not going to get hurt.
It's the hesitation that gets people hurt.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
it just, you're literally escalating it to a point where, we'll get into that in a minute. Now, look, I love the fact that you went there and you were boots on ground with these guys. I feel like more chiefs and sheriffs should do that. Go out there in the street and just show the guys, hey, sometimes they need to see you as part of them.
That's right.
And I think there is a huge detachment in a lot of these agencies from the top to the bottom, and
a lot of them are old house cats.
That's what it is.
They haven't been
there
they haven't
25
been outside looking for mice for a long time.
That's right.
And so it's really hard to know the direction of the agency if you don't know the pulse of not just the guys, but the street. Because like you said, law enforcement has changed dramatically. In the last 20 years, there's a lot of guys that have not been on the road in 20 years. Well, law enforcement has changed multiple times over the last 20 years. And so I think it's, being out there and being amongst the guys not only earns their respect, it tells them that you're one of them.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to support them. But
Without
the other
a
thing
doubt.
it does is it keeps you in tune with what are the trends in law enforcement? What are the trends in my community? What are the crimes we're facing? And so, I think there's more of them should do it.
As far as going out there and being boots on ground with these guys, I mean, from your perspective, do you think that shifted the morale a little bit?
100%. And we did little things too. Like I had a goatee and there was no facial hair policy before I came out there. We changed that. And then we started doing like No Shave November. Those are little things, but the guys loved it.
Listen, the guys love it.
They loved it.
Yes.
And I told my chiefs who were career guys, I go, guys, look, I get it. You're uncomfortable with it. I don't care. This is where we're going. It's okay. And the other thing is they had to cover all their tattoos before I came in. And look, I don't have any tattoos, but I was like, look, unless you have anything obscene, a naked woman or a curse word on your arm, you don't have to cover those. And I had guys that had tattoos on their necks and hands. And you know what? That alone, those little things showed like, hey, they're not embarrassed of us. Look, we hired them. They're good guys. The tattoos don't mean anything.
Yeah, I used to say, I'm more embarrassed if you come, out of uniform or you come sloppy.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have much of a, to me, a sloppy police officer, he comes out of uniform, his, shirt sticking out and his boots dirty. I think that's more, that's worse than, showing half a sleeve on a tattoo.
You're right. And nobody cared.
No.
In all the time I was the sheriff, nobody ever complained about facial hair.
Yeah.
And nobody ever complained about tattoos.
Right.
But yet there's chiefs out there and there's sheriffs out there.
Without a doubt.
You can't have a beard. You can't have tattoos. It's not the way police do it. Okay, whatever. I'll just keep taking those guys from those agencies when they want to go work at a place where you can be a cop.
So talk to me about your mindset when it comes to social media with police departments. I have some reservations. I'm very kind of old school.
Yep.
Me and you are about the same age. Maybe I may be a little bit older than you, but it's my background. Like I think cops, old school, stoic type, but I could see social media helping the department if done like proper in a nice way, in a good community based. Problem that I have is too much of this dancing in the car, girls with makeup and talking about this and that, and guys, I don't know. I got a big problem with that. With that segment, not with being on social media and doing it, friendly and community, and even taking one guy here, he's one of the chiefs here, and I don't know what county, but he goes out on search warrants and whatever, and he brings a film crew with him and he films it. So I'm good with all that.
Yeah.
I'm just not overly thrilled with too much dancing and girls with makeup and I don't know. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a tough one too, because when you do the social media, you kind of get a little bit of that with it. Look, I did one of those lip sync videos, but at the same time, I'm trying to build our agency up, and that thing had like 14 million views or something. But I agree. I mean, I don't love all the stuff I see, but at the same time, it's such a hard job that I kind of give a little bit of latitude, as long as you're not doing anything to disparage the agency. I'm also big on you should build your brand, So it's hard for me to tell you that I'm building my brand, but then turn around and tell you can't build your brand.
100%.
And so, trust me, we had those times. Like they would come to me and say, "Hey, this person posted this on social media," and I would just say, "Look, did it disparage the agency or our profession?" Well, no. Then I got to give them that. Yeah. I got to give them some latitude. So what we did at our agency though, we didn't really post those videos. If they do it on their own, I don't, sure. It's not my favorite, but right. What we tried to do was really showcase the profession and the agency. We had fun doing it sometimes. We did some funny videos. We would do, like we did an airborne unit one on April Fool's Day. But there's a trick to this. What we were showcasing though is every time I did those videos, if you go watch my videos with a different light, people would say, "You guys are goofing around." No, what I was showing you is I have a motor unit, I have SWAT, I have aviation, I have search and rescue.
Yeah.
And there was always a purpose behind it. And
those videos are great.
Yeah, and what it did is it drove people there. Yeah. And so we're one of the only agencies in this country, probably the only agency that monetized our social media, which is a tough one for people to get because, they say, well, you shouldn't police for profit. The problem was other people were taking our content. And if you're not monetizing the content, it's extremely difficult to get, let's say, YouTube to take that content down or Facebook. Mm-hmm. But if you start to monetize your content, you control it. Mm-hmm. So if anybody starts taking your content, you can report them and they have to take it down. And so what it gave us is the ability to not only control our content, we were going to post no matter what.
Right.
So once we convinced the community and the county, like, hey, look, we're posting no matter what. But when we do it, there's no control. We want to gain some level of control.
Sure.
And their money comes with it. And what we'll do is we will use it for our programs, our youth programs, our Shop with the Sheriff program, where we help communities, get families in the communities.
That's great.
And that's what we've done. And it brings in about $12,000 a month. And
hey, that's okay.
And it's good because it puts us out there, but at the same time, we're controlling our information as opposed to somebody else taking it and making money out.
Now,
of it.
From the time you guys went on social media and you saw, did you see an upshift in people applying
to
be part of your department?
Yeah.
And
Live PD, 60 days in, but really what it was when we really started hammering on social media and posting videos, and 2020 was a big year because I wasn't buying into the lockdowns, and I was very vocal, and I did a lot of videos on it. I didn't buy into the masks. You know, people would call me and be like, "Your deputy showed up to my house without a mask," and I go, "Good, I told him not to." And then they would, then
that.
the vaccine mandates. The vaccine mandates, you know, you don't always get the top tier when you're looking at laterals. A lot of laterals are leaving problems, you know, trying to find greener grass. But during COVID, we actually were able to land some guys that would have never have left those agencies. But because they were asked to give the vaccine, they're principled people.
There you go.
And they automatically are very good employees that we ended up picking up a lot of those guys, and it was a blessing. But it wouldn't have happened if I didn't have a large social media, and it wouldn't have happened if I didn't have the guts to go out and say it publicly, what other people think but won't say publicly. Yeah. And because of that, we were able to, we never had a problem with hiring. We were always hiring. We were getting good people, and we got them from all over the country.
Good.
And sometimes people took pay cuts to come because they're like, look, I just want to be a cop.
Yeah.
We chase people. I mean, we have pursuits all the time.
Oh boy, that's a no-go around here.
Oh no, we chase you.
They shut you down so fast.
And we left it to the deputies. We're like, you're the one driving the car. You know if it's safe or not. If it's safe, catch them. If it's not, let it go. And imagine that, giving the ability to your people to make the decision.
See, that's a great point, because it's almost like, you know, you have the sergeants and lieutenants that are out there on the street with, you know, with these officers, and they're babysitting them so much to the point where they want to know everything, literally, like to the point. They're micromanaging, and they're not letting them be cops. They're not letting them grow up. And, you know, it gets to the point where, you know, a lot of officers just, they hesitate to do anything, any real policing.
Yeah.
You know, chasing, for example. They want to know every, you know, you got to be on the radio basically explaining detail to detail to detail to detail to the sergeants, like what exactly, I mean, this is the way we teach here, what exactly is going on, instead of, hey, you know, give me a location, this is what's happening, and let the guy focus on driving. Too much going on. Oh, you're going too fast. Okay, cut it off, cut it off. I would say when I first started, we could chase all day long. Especially I had a couple great lieutenants. They would say go. They were old school guys. But then probably 5 years into my career, that all started shifting. The moment that's, you know, one cop in another county or state, you know, ran over someone and the liability was so high, and then it's like, man, you know, you have to look at it from this point of view. That's the way that I thought. I don't know if you agree with me here or not. There are, I don't even know how many departments in the United States. Just because you have one incident or two incidents, you know how many cops chase people all day long? I mean, that's the exception, not the rule. You know, so you let people come in, commit crimes. They literally came into our city, committed crime, and then once they crossed to the next city or to the next county, nobody was chasing them. The sheriff from the next county, he had the balls to go after them.
Oh yeah,
you know,
we would chase people in the Phoenix, Mesa. Yeah. We'll chase you. We would chase you 35 miles outside of our county. Yeah. We're state certified peace officers. Yeah. As long as we were good with it, we would just keep chasing them. There was other agencies that would have people run from them, come into our county, and they're like, we love it when they go to Pinal County because when we radio over, we know they're done for.
Yeah.
And look, did we let some people go? Sure. Yeah, I mean, look, sometimes the traffic is just it's not safe enough, but for the most part, man, if you ran from us, we were going to catch you.
Yeah.
And so that's police work, and people want to do that. And you kind of said it. I can't send a message like, hey, as long as you just run from us, we're going to let you go. Everybody will freaking start running from us.
That's exactly it.
And so we're not doing that. Like, we're not playing that game. If you commit a crime in Pinal County, we're coming after you.
That's great. I would have loved to have a sheriff like that backing us.
And our county was really big. So the sergeant couldn't be up in every deputy's business. Like I would go a week without seeing my sergeant sometimes.
Yeah.
We didn't have briefings. You would go 10-8 right into your beat, and your job is to control your beat. My county was the size of the state of Connecticut. So a sergeant has a tough time responding to every call. You got to give these guys the ability to make the decisions themselves.
And I think that's critical there.
Yeah.
You know, the departments that I worked for, I mean, they were pretty decent sized departments, but, you know, they were so brass heavy where, you know, you would have, you know, multiple sergeants and it would be like within a region, within a sector, you know, you would have them, you know, on you like every little, see, I didn't, especially not the first department that I worked for, but the second department that I worked for, I had an issue with that. Too much micromanaging, way too much.
I hate micromanaging.
Yeah.
I think everybody has different sets of talents. And whether it's a deputy, and especially when you start getting into sergeants and lieutenants, everybody has their level of talents. Yeah. The problem with micromanaging is you will never develop those talents from those. And how you lead is how different how I lead. Neither one of them is wrong or right. Yeah. It's just how we do it. Yeah. And here's what I have to say. I have to say, Rafa, here's the end goal. I want you to achieve that. Yeah. And if I look over your shoulder, no, that's not how I wanted you to do it. I'm defeating the purpose. Like I gave you the leadership position. Yeah. You should be able to go and figure out I want you to get to point B from point A. And I think too many agencies, and look, I got micromanagers. It's hard to weed them all out. You can't.
Of course.
I mean, I can not be a micromanager, but then I can have micromanagers in the ranks. Sure. But those guys, the cops don't want to work for those guys usually. Yeah. They want to work for a guy that lets them work.
Give me two examples or not examples, more like maybe strategies that have helped you become like a really good leader.
Well, the first is you got to be in with your troops. Like if you're going to be a leader, you know, I love there's a part in Braveheart, you know, where they're getting ready to go to war and they want to leave because the other guys are in it just for the land and the glory, you know, the position. And then, you know, William Wallace rides up on his horse and he instills that patriotism, that love of freedom, and gives them a purpose of why you should do this job. But more than anything, he was at the front. He had his sword on. He was going to go to battle right alongside with them. I think it's important, whether you want to go out or lot, or your people need to know that you are still a lion. If you are not a lion, I fear 1,000 sheep if they're led by a lion, far more than 1,000 lions led by a sheep. Yeah. And I think it's important that you show them you're a lion still. Yeah. And most guys don't do that. So that's one of them. And number two is you have to back them. You have to be the guy that is unapologetically loyal to your people, and doesn't mean you cover for things that are illegal, immoral, or unethical. But you better be the guy that's taking the bullets up there for your people. And you can't be afraid of it. You know, and I think the only way to avoid criticism, Aristotle says, the only way to avoid criticism in this life is to do nothing, say nothing, or be nothing. Yeah. Your job as a leader is to do something, to say something, and to be something. You owe it to your people to do it. And it disappoints me when I see leaders missing that opportunity to really go out there and do it.
Love it. All right, let's talk a little bit about your faith. Okay, I know you're a very highly faith-driven man, and I know that reading about your background, that you've been in missions, and this is how did that play in specifically into not only into your life but into law enforcement?
That's a big one because especially with the border stuff, a lot of people think, oh, no, you can't. What about you? You're a God-fearing person. Yeah, I'm a God-fearing person, and the law matters in God's eyes, having a set of rules, the 10 Commandments, Sure. And having faith in God, for one, helps you understand what we see in this job. The average police officer in their career will experience 400 to 700 traumatic experiences, where the average citizen may only experience 2 to 4. Mm-hmm. So we have to consistently experience things that leave a deep cut in us. And the only way to me that I think you get through that is with an anchor. And my anchor is faith. I would always tell young guys, please find your anchor. And it's probably, for most people, it's their faith. And when they drift off, it's because they got away from their anchor. They picked their anchor up. They stopped going to church, or they stopped, doing the things that mattered on a spiritual level to be able to process all the stuff that we see. As a leader, you've got to be faithful too, because you're making decisions that some are clear as crystal clear.
Yep.
And other ones are like, I don't know, my gut just tells me we should do this. My guys would tell me, Sheriff, what's your reasoning for doing this? And I would just be like, I don't know, I just feel like we should do it.
just go. With
And we would just
yeah.
do it, and they'd be like, they learned to trust more than cops want it. We're risk managers.
Yeah.
We'll take risk, but we really don't like risk. We mitigate risk down to nothing. We plan the SWAT, to hit a house, we go over it and over it and over it, and we plan it and plan it. We go through training, we go through shooting, we do all these things, probably not as much shooting as we should, but we go through all these things all to mitigate risk. And then there's those times where you just have to just take risk. It's right. If you want to get the good in life, you've got to be willing to take risk. And I would tell my guys, if you want to be a great agency, if you want people to come work here, we're going to have to take some risks. Yeah. And it's going to feel uncomfortable. And sometimes I can't explain to you why we're going to do it. But I think the leader, no matter if it's a leader of a squad, an agency, or whatever, your family, I think there's a certain level of revelation God gives people, nudges that I give to the person in charge that God gives. And if you listen and hear it, you'll know what to do. Sometimes clearer than others. But I think most people, they allow their fear of what might happen or the bad stuff to get in the way. And that's where faith comes in.
Sure.
I think my faith has helped me manage those risky situations and really say and learn to trust my gut. When I feel like something's right, we're going to do it. And I have faith that it's going to work out the way we think it's going to work out.
I'm a believer that there are several times that a man will redefine himself or reinvent himself in his lifetime. I believe 2-3 times, maybe even more. And there are defining moments during these particular times. Give me a defining moment in your life that you felt hit you hard, and from then on you were changed.
I was born, and I just felt like when I was born, I was just born with this just tremendous trust in God and faith in God. So, but, serving a mission, I had many experiences that really just cemented it in there. My path as far as my relationship with God and how that would relate with my path throughout life. Obviously, when I became a police officer, that was a whole defining thing. I felt like I defined myself as I was a man, but I never had any opportunities to really protect somebody or put on a sword and say, here am I, send me. And so becoming a police officer, becoming a sheriff was a whole nother thing, because now you're like, okay, you're in front now, lead. And so then it's a whole nother level of listening to God and listening to relying on your training, listening, trusting in your abilities, and having the confidence and the courage to go out and do what is right. And then I think I'm in one more right now in a new phase where I can be honest with you, I don't quite know what it looks like yet. I'm hitting my goals. I've set my goals and do that, but I feel like God's got something else in store for me. I don't know truly what it is yet, but I feel like it's another level up. Financially, now that I'm in the private sector and I've left law enforcement, which, by the way, any of you don't know, I ran for the U.S. Senate in Arizona because, once again, I thought there's problems that need to be fixed at a higher level or at a different level. I don't want to say higher because I think the sheriff is the best job in law, elected official. But I felt like as a sheriff, I could protect my herd from the wolves. But if somebody didn't go hunt those wolves, then they were going to multiply and replenish. And then even the best sheriff can't stop them. Yeah. Where are those wolves? They were in Washington, D.C. And so I decided to run for Senate. I lost, But at the same time, I couldn't run for both positions. So I didn't have to leave being sheriff, but I couldn't run again. I could only do one. And so on December 31st, I retired as the sheriff. And so now I'm in the private sector. I'm staying involved in the things that I love, but I'm also making a little bit more money. And really, I'm just kind of sitting here waiting and I'm able to really dive into my family a lot more, my wife, my children, my grandkids, and waiting to kind of see what God's got in store for me. But this is another one of those phases in life where I feel like something else is going to happen to go higher. So
Awesome. All right. So I want to go into you running for state senate. I'm pretty sure you must have learned a lot of things during that whole process right there.
Yeah.
So how was it?
It's part of the reason why I did it. One, I felt like I needed to do it. Number two, I'm always wanting to challenge myself. I want to do the hard thing. I want to find out what you're made of. I think that most men never truly know what they're made of. They don't even scratch the surface on what they're made of. And being a cop, you learn more and more. Being a sheriff, you learn more. And then running for Senate, man, we grinded it out. My wife and I, we worked hard. We went to countless events. We put, tens of thousands of miles on our vehicles. But there was the upside was you got to know so many people, and you realize there's a lot of other people that shared your patriotism and your love of this country, and they were grateful you were fighting for them. And then there was other people that hated you. Man, you just learn. You get emotionally tougher, you get mentally tougher, and you get physically. You realize, hey, I can push myself even further than what I thought I could push myself.
Did you get a feeling that there were snakes and people dirty and
the whole thing's a snake pit.
It is.
The whole thing's a snake pit.
Wow.
Not even when it starts, even with the people who are running campaigns, they all have losing records for the most part, yet they still get jobs, and they're not invested in I would say most are not invested in the victory. They're invested in the fact that you give them $10,000 a month or $20,000 a month. And so you start there, and then you got a lot of people that you think they support you, and then you hear somebody else say they were talking crap about you. You're like, dadgum, man. And then you got the Washington, D.C. stuff. I mean, that thing is just a straight up viper pit. But I used to always kind of joke, but I don't know if you know how they make snake venom or anti-venom. No. So the way they make anti-venom for snake bites is they actually use lambs. And they will inject a snake venom into them, and they're very hardy animals, and so their blood is able to process it. They get a little bit sick, but it doesn't kill them. Mm-hmm. And so when it processes it, then they will take this blood of the lamb out, and that's how they come up with the snake venom or anti-venom.
Very interesting.
And so I used to always say that Washington needs a little bit of lamb's blood out there.
Yikes.
And so little play on the name, but Washington truly does, man. It is. These people are so disloyal. I don't think the American people are at the top of their list. It's easy for them to get off. They might start with good intentions, so many of them, and quickly, power and influence and all those things play out. So, yeah, it's a snake pit, man.
Our country right now. We took a turn here after the last administration. I believe we are headed in the right direction, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah,
especially in the border. Talk to me about your experience in the border. Specifically in your area there.
So we're not right on the border. We're one county off the border, but on the south end of my county we're 52 miles off the border is an Indian reservation. Mm-hmm. And that actually goes into Mexico. Mm-hmm. So my first 4 years was under the first Trump administration. And so it was very different. Like the border was pretty secure. I mean, people were still coming in and we would actually have oftentimes more apprehensions than the border counties were because they were coming through the Indian reservation. Then for the last 4 years under the Biden administration, it was an absolute disaster. I mean, it was people coming from all over the world. I mean, thousands of them every day Like I think the average American thought it was all just like a wives' tale or just being embellished. But
And let me stop you there, because yes, I agree with you. I think people just kind of shrug at it and are like, yeah, whatever. That's not really the truth. Who cares? People coming in, they're over, over traumatizing it, right? Like making it a big deal.
yeah.
Did you really see a huge turnaround when that new administration took over?
Oh yeah, like from Trump to Biden.
Yeah.
Oh,
Trump
it
to
was
Biden.
night and day. It was like they flipped a switch, and all of a sudden, tens of thousands of people hundreds of thousands of people started showing up.
And what were the like? I have a good friend of mine that's been part of ICE, and I mean he says the same thing. It was just like, so all these people that were coming out into the street and aimlessly just, I mean, what was your mindset? Like, what were you doing with these people? You just had to let them go. There was no processing. There was nothing. There was just like,
So I wasn't about to do that. I mean, like I can't. What I would do is stop them and turn them over to Border Patrol. But the Border Patrol was so overwhelmed.
right.
And I mean, we had a group of 30 we caught coming out of the desert one day, and we called Border Patrol, and they couldn't come pick them up. And you have to release them.
Crazy.
We would stop traffic, vehicle after vehicle after vehicle of human loads over and over and over again. Wow. And fortunately, we're close to Border Patrol where we were, so they would usually come pick them up. But guess what Border Patrol and those guys would do after they picked them up?
Yeah.
They release them.
Yep.
And many times they were giving them hotel rooms, and they were giving them plane tickets, and they were giving them gift cards, and they're giving them. When I said that, people said I was lying. And it's
That's
people in
disturbing.
New York and D.C. who have never stepped foot on the border. And it's the government who's the one that's lying to you, telling you the border's secure.
Yeah.
And now you got in LA where they're all out there and they're making it sound like everybody that is being removed from the country is from Mexico. And that's just not true. Like over the last 4 years, they were all military age men for the most part, mind you. That's a concerning thing. And if you truly wanted what's best for your family and you scared for your family, would you leave your family wherever you came from?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No,
right?
it doesn't make sense. So they were coming here, military age men from China, from Africa, from Russia, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Iran, Afghanistan. They were coming from everywhere. What we had a ton of in Arizona were people from, they were coming from Africa, from Congo, from Sudan, from Mauritania. Mauritania is one of the leading breeding grounds for Al-Qaeda. And they were coming from Mauritania like it was going out of style. I remember talking to one of the Border Patrol ladies, and she goes, out of 7,000 Mauritanians, how many do you think were women? And I was like, I don't know. She goes, less than 5.
Wow.
They're all military-age men.
No joke.
700 Iranians. You think that might be a problem right now? Those are the ones you know about. How many do you not know about? How many gotaways? I think the number was easily 15 million, in my opinion. The government admits
Lord.
about 11 million. I think it was more like 15 million. A lot of the cameras weren't working, so how are you going to tell whether you even saw them coming across? The sensors weren't turned on. They wanted to flood this country with people that came in this country illegally. And now they don't want you to take them out. The fact that they're fighting so hard to remove them, to keep them from being removed, tells you they had an agenda bringing them in the first place. So like it was scary for us to watch firsthand because the rest of the country is trying to play it off like it's not a problem. And we're like, hey guys, this is a real problem. And yet, government officials kept doing it.
Yeah, everything is hush hush. Keep them quiet. Keep them away. You have networks don't even cover the stories. It's like whatever, in passing. It's never like a highly focused story.
And you know what bothers me the most? During that time, women were being trafficked for sex by the tens of thousands. Children were being trafficked and used as pawns, trafficked for sex into this country by the tens of thousands. Americans were dying from fentanyl every day. And this government was not only not doing anything about it, they were opening the floodgates for it. We went to war for 20 years for 3,500 Americans roughly, and this is not to demean it in any way, shape, or form, of what happened on 9/11. We went to war for 20 years.
Yeah.
We were losing 100,000 Americans
That's
a
right.
year from fentanyl.
Yes.
Women, children, whatever, all sorts of Americans. And yet we didn't find that to be an act of terrorism. We didn't find that to be concerning. Like, I think the atrocities that our government officials allowed to occur are just straight up evil.
I'm with you 100%. I feel like we are in a state right now. Well, I'm feeling better about it. As
I feel better
forward,
about it
you
too.
know.
By the way.
I feel
Yeah,
better
like,
about
I'm
it
not
now.
trying to end on a low note, but I think people need to understand the seriousness
Sure.
of
Sure.
just the evil that was coming in, and just the sheer tragedy that occurred.
But let me ask you this. Now, obviously, we're in a very hyper sensitive environment right now with everything that's going on. All right. What do you do now? I mean, because you know, think about it. Thousands and thousands and thousands of Iranians came into this country.
Yep.
We don't know, sleeper cells left and right. I mean, I told my family, I said, we need to be highly aware right now. We can't just like be chill about this. We need to be like, I talked to them about, you know, being code yellow and then being code orange.
Yeah.
We got to be right in that level right now. And, you know, now I'm stacking an extra mag in my pouch when I walk around, you know, just, I'm a little bit more hypersensitive with what's going on. You know, what are your thoughts on that, especially from a law enforcement perspective where, I mean, this is, you know, what's happening now. There's so much tension, but inside this country, I guarantee you, I am so confident that there's going to be at least one or two attempts, terrorist attempts at something. They're going to try to hit it in a highly populated area.
Yeah.
You know, I just feel it. I feel that something is going to happen.
Well, that's how I've always said. It's not if, it's when. And I think people should listen when somebody like yourself, who's been in this profession for a long time, when the hair on our head, the back of our neck stands up. You know, I don't have any hair on my head, but when the hair on the back of my neck stands up, you know, people should probably take a notice of that, you know, because it's a real concern. People need to be, you know, I'm friends with Christian Craighead, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy that, I think it was Mumbai or somewhere in Africa when the terrorists came in,
Mm-hmm.
and then you see the guy go to the back of his car and grab his kit.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
put
yeah,
on
yeah.
his kit and
Yes,
his
yes,
balaclava
yes. I saw that.
and goes
yes.
in and just starts
Yeah.
going to work.
Yeah.
And I've talked to him about that, and he's like, look, it was just another day for me. I didn't really think much of it. The story that he tells, I think he probably told it on Sean Ryan, but that where he picks a guy up on his way into the city,
Mm-hmm.
and this guy's got this big knife in his bag, and he's like, you know, do I need to worry about that and this and that? And when he drops the guy off, he says, may many blessings be upon you this day. And 30 minutes later, an hour later, he's in a 20-hour dealing with, I mean, it was a lot of hours he was dealing with. But though I bring that up, the point I bring it up is be prepared.
Yeah.
Like, that's, you know, a warrior should always be prepared for what may come, because it doesn't come when you think it's going to come.
That's right.
It comes when you least expect it. And certainly if you're going to be in areas where there's lots of large groups of people, those are heightened security areas now. I think people should be more cognizant. I'm not one of those guys who lives in fear. Like, I'm like, when it's your time, it's your time.
Without a doubt.
Like, death will catch you. You're not going to hide from it.
No.
But I also don't think you should walk around blindly and not paying attention and being unprepared. I think you should, you know, be the best. You owe it to your family. You owe it to yourself to be prepared,
No,
be
for sure.
physically fit, be emotionally fit, and be prepared, you know.
I mean, little things, you know, we talk about watch where you sit, you know, just watch the people around you. Don't put yourself in a position where, you know, and have a conversation with your family. A lot of men just don't. They don't have a conversation with their family. If things go really, really bad, what happens? What are you going to do? especially if you have younger kids, like my daughter, like that's important. She knows if daddy ever needed to engage an active shooter, that I'm going to be moving toward that shooter, and they're going to be moving the opposite way that I'm moving.
That's good.
I mean, those are little conversations that I think
You don't want to
that,
wait till it happens to figure it out, You don't want your child chasing you because that's their natural instinct is to follow their protector.
Yeah, to be next to you. Yeah. So I think in this world, especially now that you're you mentioned that you're relaxed, and I'm very relaxed too. I just like to be, I like to keep my head on a swivel. It's been coming from a hyper violent law enforcement career. Even now, I get stopped by cops here once in a while because I put dark tints on and they're all illegal. And I say it, listen, it is what it is. The reason I do that is because literally, working undercover narcotics for so many years, there's dudes that I put in jail that are coming out now.
Yeah.
Okay. And it happened to me twice already in certain situations where they saw me and they were like, their eyes lit up, and I was driving by and my family was in my seat and they literally got behind me. I mean, so a situation where I just, at times I have that in the back of my head. I put a lot of people in jail, and, I'm sure at times you feel the same way where, you put people behind bars, you just never know when you're going to see those people again and the situations. So for me, I'm always in a little bit of having that little bit of that alert going off.
Yeah.
I love
you asked the fix, though. The fix is you got to continue to remove people as hard as it is socially for people.
Yeah.
And it goes back to my belief in God. Look, I'm okay with it because, like I told this congresswoman one time, she goes, well, what about all the good people? And I said, okay, well, that's great. That's not. First of all, let me tell you I didn't tell her this, but let me tell you about those good people.
Yeah.
Those good people that came across broke the law when they came across. You may be a good person, but you broke the law. Then, if you're driving a car, you most likely do not have a driver's license. So you're driving, that's illegal. If you don't have insurance on your car, that's illegal. And if you get in an accident, you might leave somebody in a lurch because you didn't have insurance. If you're working, you're either working under the table or you have a fake social security number.
Sure.
You're probably not paying taxes. All of these things, like I can still stack them on. These are just the good people.
Yeah.
I didn't even talk about the bad people. So, but anyway, I say to the congresswoman, I said, look, let me ask you this. If there was 10 people across the border, 5 of them good, 5 of them bad, but I don't have time to vet them. Would you let me put them in your house? And she's like, quiet. And I said, the answer, you're quiet because the answer is no, ma'am. I said, you wouldn't put them in your house.
Yeah.
And I go, let me take it a step further. Maybe this is more in line with the statistics. Let's say that 9 of them are good and 1 of them is bad, and he's a sex offender from another country. Will you let me put him in your house? And she was quiet again. And I said, ma'am, the answer is no. And I said, my job as a sheriff is to stop, if I have to stop 9 good people to stop that 1 sex offender so he doesn't hurt an American, you better believe that's what I'll do. And I sleep good at night knowing, because we have a legal process in place, whether it's jacked up or not, we have a legal process in place for good people to come to this country and contribute to a good America. If you came in illegally, I'm sorry, you knew the consequences when you came in. And so we have to remove people that came into this country illegally. We should start by looking for those people that we know to be threats to this country. But there's going to be collateral people that are going to be removed. But ultimately, everybody should be removed that came to this country illegally. If I went to another country, I've lived in other countries, they would remove my butt. Actually, they would probably put me in jail for a while. And it won't be like an American jail.
If we had the amount of Americans going into, let's just say, the Philippines or Argentina or Panama or, I don't know, Guatemala, whatever, they would not just sit around, and let them do what they're doing now.
No.
With, their flags and the countries running around. I, it confuses me. I don't know if it confuses you when you have people rioting with their country flags in our country.
Yeah, like if you love it, go. The door
Go.
swings the other way. Like you are more than welcome to leave this country at any point.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. If you come to America, like when I lived in Argentina or Panama, I didn't walk around carrying an American flag. Was I proud to be an American? Yes. Was I thrilled to live in those countries? Yes. I respect those countries. I would never disrespect them by flying somebody else's flag. And I certainly wouldn't fly that flag while trying to keep people in a country illegally. Like if you
Yeah.
what are you flying the other it makes no sense. My brain can't even
No.
explain it away
doesn't,
for
it doesn't make sense.
It's embarrassing.
Doesn't make sense at all.
And it's really disingenuous and disrespectful to the men and women who serve this country, whether in a law enforcement capacity or a veteran capacity, that you would go out and fly somebody else's flag in this country.
What's your take on what's going on right now in the world with Iran and Ukraine and the Russia side of the house and Ukraine, and then Iran and Israel?
Look, I'm not an isolationist, but I think we should put Americans first always. And I think we got a lot of problems here in this country we need to fix. I think we should be laser focused on that. I think our tax dollars we're $37 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
You know, this is like, going and borrowing money from your uncle and your uncle's broke as a joke.
Sure.
We're not in a position to be out there. We got to strengthen America again. And look, they've got issues. And while Iran is they don't, they're going to Israel's going to handle Iran no problem. I liked what President Trump did, dropping the bombs on them. It's not an act of war. I mean, I think it's just it's an aggression. It's an attack, but we're not in war with them. We took out some of their key things. I was okay with that. I think you achieve peace through strength. And I think President Trump does a good balance of peace through strength. I've been not a fan of the Ukraine, Russia stuff from the beginning. I mean, I think there was a lot of fraud that went on with politicians in this country and in Ukraine.
Me too.
With all the money that was funneled over there. And I think that there should be some investigations. I think people should go to jail for it. And I think if we would have stopped sending money to Ukraine a long time ago, that war would have been over. They milk it because they're getting money for it. So these are my opinions, but more than anything, I think we should focus on America and American citizens.
Are you going to run again?
I don't know. They want me to run for Congress right now, but I don't know.
Well, what are you
probably?
What are you tweaking with the negatives and the positives? Just give me an inside look.
Look, the negatives. It's a huge impact on your family.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was 20 years as a cop, and then spent my last year and a half running for Senate.
Yeah.
So financially, it depletes you.
Yeah.
You don't make a lot of money. I made $100,000 as a sheriff. My take home was $5,500 a month. Most of my guys made more than me in my agency. So I wasn't making a ton of money as a sheriff. I now have an opportunity to go out and actually make a little bit of money for my family and put myself in a better place to be able to help this country.
Yeah.
And so while I think I may end up back in politics, because not that I like politics, I don't want to run, but I continue to see we're not getting the right people in Washington, D.C. to fix this country. Yeah. I think we need some more cowboy hats and belt buckles back in Washington, some common sense and some real American views. I think we need to tighten up the purse strings, and it takes tough people to go out and make tough decisions on a national level, because politically it won't be great. You're going to have a tough time weathering the political storm if you do what needs to be done. So I'm probably not done. I'm hoping to get a little time under my belt. I'm building a business. I'm launching a business, which is kind of in your neck of the woods. A lot of law enforcement guys don't know anything about business. They don't know anything about what's a sole proprietorship, an LLC, and they have all these talents, but then they leave. And this is why a lot of cops die. The average cop dies within 5 years of retirement, because there's no purpose. And so what we're doing is we created a website. It's called 10-7 Consulting, but the website is Show Me 10-7, which for those that you don't know, 10-7 for most agencies is I'm off duty. So what we're doing is you get a membership. We help you set up an LLC. And then we have all these videos that teach you about taxes and business setup and
that's
this
great.
and that. And then it creates a community where we help one another in our businesses, and we give you a new purpose in life. And so I'm launching that. The website will be up next week. So July, and then I wrote a book to coincide with it. The book is 10-7, When Your Shift Ends and Your Life Begins.
Oh, I love that name. That's
And then I'll be launching
Can you
my podcast.
buy that book and where?
It'll be on Amazon probably around July 15th. So
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And what's the website for the domain?
So Show Me 10-7. So show SHOWMETEN 7 or 10-7 Consulting, TEN 7 Consulting.
Very good.
So yeah, look, we just want to help veterans, want to help law enforcement.
Yes.
Look, even if you don't do business, just having an LLC and you know this will save you probably $10,000 in taxes a year.
Great. That's great.
Yeah.
And cops need that so desperately.
They do. And you
know,
there's some statistics that show if you're over the age of 40, when and most cops when they retire are going to be 45, 50, 55, that when you make a significant change, the chances of you getting a job that is significant is low.
Yes.
So you should start building your business before. And right now, with all the baby boomers going out of wanting to retire and all the franchise opportunities, there is a real opportunity for these guys to get into some businesses that are already cash flow positive. And so we want to help them do that.
Love that.
Yeah, showme107.com.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, if you run again, I'm going to back you 100% on that.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
So listen, I thank you. It was an honor to have you on here.
My
Great
pleasure.
talk.
Honor to be on. And I love the podcast name. If you haven't been to his office, this is awesome here, man. I love the decorations.
I want to say your wife behind the scenes, thank you for coming. I know she sat there and she's been watching everything intently.
And to her point, and you're probably the same way. For every strong man, every man of war, you're going to have a probably even stronger woman behind it. My wife is not the exception. She is a great woman. And all the stuff I do is because of her. And so, or my kids, that's why if I didn't have kids or a wife, I'd probably be sitting home eating a bag of chips right now. But yeah.
Love that.
Probably
Very
not,
powerful.
but you know what I mean.
Well, again, thank you for being on, and we're going to have you on again because we can sit here and talk for hours.
Let's do it anytime.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. God bless.
God
Thank
bless.
you.
Hey, guys, if you love this interview here with Sheriff Mark Lamb, I want you to do me a favor. Smash that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, and of course, share the hell out of this. Comment, do everything you can to share this with great men out there who really, really want to take their lives to the next level. God bless you and see you on the next one.